message today is entitled, From Sinners to Masters. Continuing today with the study of the outline of the concepts in my book, Discover the Power Within You, which we're doing over this 2-week period. And the total thesis is that while Christianity has taught the divinity of Jesus, Jesus taught the divinity of man. Now, of course, this universal message has been greatly obscured. He said, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Man hungers for freedom from want, from sickness, from oppression and fear. But somehow the religion about Jesus has simply failed to open the way. Jesus' teaching is really quite clear, but terribly challenging. The central theme of Christianity, normally, is sin and evil. Preachers have talked more about hell than heaven, more about the devil than about God. Though we have been given a picture of Jesus' mastery, man has been pictured as a poor, miserable sinner. Now, this hideous dogma of the total depravity of man did not come out of Jesus' teaching. It was the deliberate creation of theologians in the early days of Christianity, created to offset a trend toward rationalization. There was a heretical movement known as Gnosticism, the people who believed that knowledge rather than faith is the key to salvation. They felt they had a superior knowledge from inner illumination, and thus they felt superior to other Christians and equal to Jesus. So to offset this obvious heresy, the church leaders drew up decrees stating that Jesus was very God, that he was God who had come down from out there, that he had put on clothes as an earthman, but that he was not human. And to make the distinction unmistakable, the doctrine was formulated of the sinful nature of man, the original sin by which man was forever cursed with the stigma of humanity. Elevated to central position was Psalm 51, which reads, "I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me." Of course, this was taken completely out of context. Psalm 51 was a psalm of despair. Nathan, the prophet, had reprimanded David for his act of sending Bathsheba's husband to his death so he could have her. And David is commiserating over his sins. He's saying, as many of us say sometimes in a very low moment, "I wish I had never been born. I'm no good. I must have been conceived and born in sin." So this was taken out of context and held up as the ideal illustration of man. It's a paradox of religious belief. We wouldn't hold up David's act of stealing another's wife as law for all persons, but we take these emotional words of despair and make them the central theme of our theology. It really doesn't make sense. Especially when David was so much more articulate in a higher state of consciousness. In the 8th Psalm, for instance, he says, "When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him but little lower than God, and crownest him with glory and honor. Thou makest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet." So the question, what is man, is best answered in the most majestic statement of the whole Bible. God created man in his image and after his likeness. So the image is man as God sees him. The likeness is that which must be worked out in man's consciousness and outformed in his body and affairs. It is man's destiny to produce a likeness in the without of the divine image within. And this is precisely what Jesus did. The theologians declared that Jesus was God become man, but he knew that God had already become man when he first breathed the breath of life into his own image, and it became a living soul. So the heart and core of Jesus' teachings concern not the depravity, but the divinity of man. Jesus had discovered this principle of divine sonship and had demonstrated it in his own life. And then his ministry was devoted to teaching the universality of the principle, in a very real sense, the repeatability of the Christ, helping people to rise from their own sins to self-mastery. And remember, he said, "Nothing shall be impossible unto you." Nothing. He said, "Be ye perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect." Now, why would he say this if he did not believe that man contained the same potential for perfection as he did? Remember, he said, "All that I do, you can do too, and greater things than these." We need to get the idea into consciousness. Made in the image and likeness of God. This is no figure of speech. It's a practical fact and a dynamic truth. Remember when the people sought to stone Jesus for saying that God was his Father, he quoted the 82nd Psalm, which said, "I have said ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High." So he was saying, I only say of myself what your law says of every one of you. I don't set myself forth as an exception, but as an example of what the nature of man truly is. Charles Fillmore once wrote, "What Jesus did, we all can do, and it is fair to say that his is the normal standard for every individual, and that every other expression of life is abnormal. We need not look for another in whom to witness the Christ, as did John the Baptist, but we must look for the Christ in ourselves, precisely as the man Jesus found the Christ in himself." But you see, Christ is not a person. Christ is a principle, a level of the particularization of God into man, the focal point through which all the attributes of God are projected into livingness. It is man's true hope of glory and the key to health and success. The word Christ is only truly defined by the word unity. You see, the difference between Jesus and you and me is not the manner of his birth or the spiritual capacity, but a difference in the awareness and the demonstration of it. We're not pulling Jesus down to our level, but we're raising man to his level as a potential. Low and base as man may sometimes act, he is still a child of God with the potential of the Christ within. Jesus insisted that every person can do and be all that he revealed if we stand where he stood, if we know the truth about our own innateness. Now, Jesus did not ignore or deny man's weakness or his downright sinfulness, but neither did he insist that man is bound to weakness, that he is eternally a miserable sinner. He believed that sin is the frustration of the potential within man, and that evil is simply the concealment of the good. He didn't get involved in whether someone was worthy to be helped or healed. He knew that their sinfulness was simply the frustration of their inherent goodness. So he urged them one and all to pick up their bed and go and sin no more, to walk on. He believed in the divinity within each and every person, the innate right to wholeness. This doesn't mean that every person can become a Jesus, or become a great artist, or a poet, or a singer. But you can become your uniqueness. Jesus was not working magic. He was simply saying, you can overcome, you can be healed, not because I'm something special, but because you are something special. Remember, Jesus once asked the disciples, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter was the only one who responded, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus then said, "Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, flesh and blood hath not revealed this unto thee, but my Father in heaven." You can never know a person by his background or intellectual analysis of character. The only correct evaluation is his potential. So Jesus is saying, you came to this answer not by sight, but by insight. You have seen the divinity within me. Now, this has been made to prove the divinity of Jesus, but it is Peter, not Jesus, who is being lauded. Jesus had proven his capacities, but this incident emphasizes the flash of spiritual perception by Peter, enabling him to see beyond the human to the divine. So in a sense, it reveals his innate divinity. Jesus is delighted, and he says, "Thou art Peter, and upon this rock will I build my church." There is great confusion on this point. This has been responsible for the establishment of the whole Christian institution. It has been made to say, "Peter, I'm so proud of you, I'm going to build my ecclesiastical organization upon you," so that actually St. Peter's church was purportedly built on the bones of Peter. And the man we call Peter was really Simon. Peter was a nickname used only after this incident. Jesus was not naming the man, but praising the quality, Petros, similar to our word faith. Jesus is praising Simon for his perception and his stability, saying that it is on this kind of vision that the church must be built. Now, we read into that word church all that it has come to mean since that time, but you see, there was no church then. The word was ecclesia, and it means literally called out ones. So actually, Jesus is dealing with thoughts, not things. He's referring here to an aggregation of ideas in spiritual consciousness. The church deals with building the inner life of man. To build this inner life, we must develop the perception to see ourselves and others in the context of the divinity of man. What is man? Man is what he can be. Anything else is simply what he thinks he is. If he thinks he is something, then that's what he is, because he thinks it's that. There's no easy answer to the question, what is man? For we can see so many different levels of expression of the person. We see a whole performance of his possibilities in different degrees of manifestation. Man is what he can be, but what is that? Only spiritual perception can tell. If you answer from flesh and blood level and you define him as being limited to only one part of his eternal performance, But spiritual insight reveals thou art Christ, the Son of the living God. Life forever asks you, and every one of us, who do you think you are? Reflect on the whole person that you are. Humanly, you may be sick, you may be insufficient, you may be inadequate. But this is only one part of the whole. Are you only what you appear to be? No, you are what you can be. And what can you be? You can be perfect, healthy, the radiant expression of the living God. So when life demands of you, as it does all the time, who do you think you are? The answer is speak the word of truth and affirm, I am a spiritual being, I am whole and free, I am confident and capable, I am the master of my life. Now, of course, we do not see this potentiality in many persons. Perhaps it's not easy to see it in anyone, even oneself. This is why Jesus says, judge not according to appearances, but judge righteous judgment. Don't be misled by a facade. You are greater than your weakness. You are wiser than your follies. Even the criminal is better than he thinks he is. He too is a performance, but he's misreading the notes and creating a dissonance. Jesus would see him with spiritual perception. We've been conditioned to believe in good people and bad people, and the world's problems are caused by the bad, and this is a dangerous implication, because the thought is if we just separate the good from the bad, we'll have a good world. But who's to decide what is good and bad? The Hindustani word namaskar is a beautiful word that fulfills this whole idea. Salute the divinity within. I salute the divinity within you. Namaskar, N-A-M-A-S-K-A-R. No matter where you are or what you may be, no matter how much you have lost or how little you have gained, no matter how far you may be from the heights you have set for yourself or feel that God has set for you, the power to become is your divine inheritance. You can overcome, you can succeed, you can be healed if you believe in your divinity and act as if it were the reality of you and keep on in your efforts. So we say to you, Namaskar, N-A-M-A-S-K-A-R, Namaskar. The divinity within me salutes the divinity within you.